For as long as people have chosen to enter into conflict with each other, militaries around the world have been working on ways to improve the way in which they operate, the efficiency in which they operate, and the procedures that they follow in order to increase effectiveness. Often referred to as battle procedure, these components enable modern militaries today to be able to operate seamlessly across multi-domains. The mnemonic used to remember this is CAKE. CAKE stands for Concurrent Activity, Anticipation at all levels, Knowledge of the grouping system, and Efficient drills and skills. We're going to look at each of these in turn, and we're going to be relaying how we can use those within the civil context in order to support businesses and operations globally to be able to function more efficiently and more effectively. So when we think about concurrent activity, in a military context, we are thinking potentially about various force elements preparing to work together. So let's give an example. If the UK wanted to deploy an air brigade forward in order to support a humanitarian operation, there are several things that we would expect to see happen. At the highest level, we would expect to see our maritime forces preparing vessels and preparing freight in order to move the humanitarian aid towards the affected country. From an Air Force perspective, we might see logistics aircraft being re-rolled from cargo to passenger in order to move the people to the operation. And from the Air Brigade perspective, we might see people forward deploy to the airhead in preparation for the movement to the country. So that is concurrent activity. When we think about this in a civil context, we could be, for example, looking at a new product launch. And when we think about a new product launch, there are lots of siloed operations that are going to be taking place. We could have the marketing team that are thinking about how we're going to get that product to people, how we're going to communicate the features, how we're going to actually distribute it, and what promotions we might choose to have. From a finance perspective, we could be looking at the key KPIs, we could be looking at how we're going to fund the operation, we could look at the financial risk that we're taking. But in addition to that, we might have to look at some of the physical distribution requirements. So for example, how are we moving the product on the global mile? What are our operations teams doing? Do we need to onboard new vendors? Do we need to onboard additional third-party logistics support? Do we need to increase our last mile delivery? What is the end customer experience that we seek to have? So the concurrent activity are all the various siloed operations within our organization, understanding what they need to do in order to support this new product launch. The next area that I want to reflect upon is anticipation. So it's anticipation at all levels through a particular operation. So in the military example that I provided earlier for concurrent activity, some of the low-level anticipation in that could be, where is the affected country? So the affected country is in either hot climatic conditions or cold climatic conditions. So a unit store leader might choose to get all the sizes of all of the people of their particular unit that's about to deploy in anticipation for the requirements for hot weather or cold weather clothing. At the next level up, the logistics leader might think that, for example, if the affected country has got challenges with its road infrastructure and distribution infrastructure as a result of whatever has caused the humanitarian crisis, they might be thinking about the requirement for bridge laying equipment or obstacle crossing equipment. So you can see how anticipation enables people to start thinking about the sorts of stuff that they might need to do in order to be ready for the operation, bearing in mind that not a single order has been given yet. So in the civil context, anticipation can fall into several areas. In a similar way, talking about hot and cold, we could be looking at seasonality. So we might be anticipating that we're going to require more stock of warm weather clothing as we can anticipate that we're moving in towards the summer months, and that we have forecasts indicating that the summer is going to be particularly warm. Similarly, the opposite is true. As we move from summer in towards winter, we can start to anticipate what people are going to require for their winter clothing, and we can start getting that forward deployed so that we can start ready for meeting the customer requirements. But anticipation can also be at the geopolitical level. So for example, if I was a supply chain leader responsible for a global mile and I can see increased tension in various choke points around the world, then I might start anticipating whether I need to onboard new suppliers. I might start anticipating what that risk means to me, and I might start investigating what are the implications for me to either nearshore, reshore, or indeed start looking at adaptive manufacturing. I could also look at diversification of my supply base. It's all anticipation, it's all in readiness for something that is highly predictable. Thinking about knowledge of the grouping system, what we're interested from a military perspective is our understanding of the order of battle. And what we mean by that is, what is the role that every individual unit is going to play, and how do those units interact with each other? A detailed understanding of how the units to the left and the right of you operate, function, and are supported enables you to be able to support them to achieve the effects that you wish to have. So for example, if you were looking at something like an artillery unit, the artillery unit might be operating with an airborne unit, or it could be operating with a commando unit, or it could operating with line infantry. Those three different units have got different requirements as it comes to sustainment, as it comes to the way that they want to have the effect delivered, and it's going to impact how the artillery unit moves around the battlefield. So understanding where you fit into that orbit can have significant structural changes to how you will operate and the procedures and policies that you need to follow. It also has an implication around the logistics chain that you will have at your disposal. So when we think about that in a civil context, an understanding of the grouping system, the knowledge of the grouping system, becomes critical. So for example, if I was working in retail and I'm intending to bring new products to market, or I'm procuring larger quantities of product, then I need to understand that to the left and to the right of me, I've got people that are going to be responsible for procuring those products. I've got global mile teams that are going to be responsible for moving those products to the markets. And I've got logistics teams that are going to be responsible for moving the product from the global mile landing points and dispersing that to the various warehouses before it gets to the end customer. So my understanding that those things are going to be happening left and right of me gives me an opportunity to do some clever things. So for example, I might reasonably expect that warehouse operations teams are going to store volume as it pertains to velocity for output. And if that's the case, and I know that I'm bringing in a high velocity item, it enables me to be able to have a conversation with my warehouse teams about where they want to receive that volume for the most efficiency and how they're going to store that volume. If I look to the other side, to the global mile, if I know that I'm bringing increased quantity of product one into my market, then I might choose to seek opportunities to consolidate on container fill rates so that I can actually improve the economies of scale for the movement of volume into my markets. So that ability to understand what's happening left and right of you gives you a clear opportunity to be able to support the total value chain. When we think about efficient drills and skills, what we're talking about is understanding how your procedures work, how you function, and what your role is within a particular unit. So for example, if I was operating in a military logistics environment, I might be choosing to improve driver training for nighttime operations because we expect to be able to operate in all weathers. I might be choosing to practice the use of various logistics drops trucks so that we understand how we're going to handle the cargo. I might be choosing to use the vehicles in line with a bridge laying function or a ferry operation or working at the ports in order that I get an understanding of how my procedures work in practice, and more importantly that my individual soldiers understand their role within those particular contexts. So that ability to continuously rehearse your procedures means that when something does happen, you are able to respond efficiently and effectively because you're well drilled and understand exactly how you function. The same thing is true in a civil context. So for example, if I'm working in a warehouse operation and we've got into February, so we've dealt with all of those returns and we're now into February, then we might reasonably start to take opportunities to cross-train our people in preparation for Q4 if I was working in e-commerce, in order that I had people that could be involved in both picking and packing and other roles within the warehouse. Taking that opportunity early means that I'm increasing my flexibility and agility, and I'm assuring that as many people across the facility are able to function in different roles and understand how those roles impact each other. The other areas that we might look at could be, for instance, in our demand planning teams. So we might choose to take moments to train our teams on different models, different ways of thinking, different factors. We might choose to learn how different technology components can work alongside our operations in order that we can get more efficient and more effective in the use of those tools, so that when we're called upon to use them, we're able to do so efficiently and effectively, and therefore increase the operational output of the business.